how it works?
Sure. New Glenn is a very large, a heavy lift launch vehicle. It'll take about 45 metric tons to LEO, very large class. It's about half the thrust, a little more than half the thrust of the Saturn V rocket. So it's about 3.9 million pounds of thrust on liftoff. The booster has 7 BE4 engines. Each engine generates a little more than 550,000 pounds of thrust. The engines are fueled by liquefied natural gas, LNG, as the fuel, and LOX as the oxidizer. The cycle is an ox-rich stage combustion cycle. It's a cycle that was really pioneered by the Russians. It's a very good cycle. And that engine is also going to power the first stage of the Vulcan rocket, which is the United Launch Alliance rocket. Then the second stage of New Glenn is powered by 2 BE3U engines, which is a upper stage variant of our new Shephard liquid hydrogen engine. So the BE3U has 160,000 pounds of thrust. So 2 of those, 320,000 pounds of thrust. And hydrogen is a very good propellant for upper stages because it has very high ISP. It's not a great propellant, in my view, for booster stages because the stages then get physically so large. Hydrogen has very high ISP, but liquid hydrogen is not dense at all. So to store liquid hydrogen, if you need to store many thousands of pounds of liquid hydrogen, your liquid hydrogen tank gets very large. So you get more benefit from the higher ISP, the specific impulse. You get more benefit from the higher specific impulse on the second stage. And that stage carries less propellant, so you don't get such geometrically gigantic tanks. Mm-hmm. The Delta IV is an example of a vehicle that is all hydrogen. The booster stage is also hydrogen. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's a very effective vehicle, but it never was very cost effective. So it's operationally very capable, but not very cost effective.
So size is also costly.
Size is costly. So it's interesting. Rockets love to be big. Mm-hmm. Everything works better.
What do you mean by that? You've told me that before. It sounds epic, but what's it?
I mean, when you look at the kind of the physics of rocket engines, and also when you look at parasitic mass, it doesn't. If you have, let's say you have an avionic system, so you have a guidance and control system, that is going to be about the same mass and size for a giant rocket as it is going to be for a tiny rocket. Mm-hmm. And so that's just parasitic mass that is very consequential if you're building a very small rocket, but is trivial if you're building a very large rocket. So you have the parasitic mass thing. And then if you look at, for example, rocket engines have turbopumps. They have to pressurize the fuel and the oxidizer up to a very high pressure level in order to inject it into the thrust chamber where it burns. And those pumps, all rotating machines, in fact, get more efficient as they get larger. So really tiny turbo pumps are very challenging to manufacture, and any kind of gaps, are like between the housing, for example, and the